And I think we're live.
We're live.
Good morning, everybody.
My head is so much bigger than everybody else's. This is not fair. Like, I've got a big head anyway.
It was a total accident, Toby, I promise. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to this very first stream of HR Buzz Live Chat. My name's Jamie Keeling. I'm the Head of Solutions at My Staff Shop. We are the UK's first and only employee-owned employee benefits provider, which is pretty cool. Now, this is the first of one of our monthly kind of live chats where we're going to be exploring all manner of HR topics. So as part of this, we're going to be inviting industry guests onto the show as well, so you can hear all kinds of different opinions from different people. And we're going to be chatting about everything relating to the world of work, essentially. So what are we going to be talking about? Well, things like leadership, employee engagement, culture, employee health and well-being, employee benefits, careers, recruitment, leadership, learning and development, and HR tech. But before we get into all of that, I think it's time that we introduce our guests for today. So we have with us Mr. Toby Kheng he's the founder of Freeformers, and we have Sonia Moore, former head of HR at Johnson's and founder of Liberté Coaching. So welcome to both of you to the show, the very first of this new series. Perhaps you'd like to start by just telling the audience a bit about yourself. So we'll start with you, Sonia, if that's all right.
Hi, yeah, absolutely. So welcome, everybody. So I now live in France, which is a very key thing. I came out of corporate life, as many of us know it, about 3 years ago, where I was a CPO. And now I'm an entrepreneur and a coach and run a coaching company that's looking at making coaching accessible and affordable, but also, as I shared briefly with the other guys, currently setting up a AI adaptive gamified learning platform for management skills, which is right in that tech space. So that's it. Oh, this crazy house, if it gets noisy back here, has got 17 cats, 7 dogs, and 3 horses. The horses aren't in the house, but everybody else could be anywhere. So over to you, Toby.
This house has 1 cat. There we go. There's my intro. Nowhere near as many animals here. I have 2 feral children, which are as good as animals at the moment.
Probably worse.
Definitely messier. They need mucking out every now and again, just like horses. So I'm Toby Kheng, co-founder of Freeformers. We're essentially trying to create a better world of work with everyone, for everyone, by using data and technology to form human-centered insights and then provide human-centered design to create a better end-to-end employee experience journey for those people in employment.
What wonderful introductions. Thank you very much, both of you. I just want to give a quick shout out and hello to Marcia, who says, look, 2 of my faves, Sonia and Toby. So
I love Marcia. I've worked with Marcia a number of times and she's absolutely cracking.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Seconded.
Now, Sonia, you shared a little bit there about a new business venture which you're looking to launch around kind of HR tech and AI. And actually that fits in really nicely with the theme of today's show, because we're going to be discussing just that, HR tech, and more importantly, the changing face of it. So maybe we should start by just outlining kind of where we've been and maybe where we are, and then we can look at where things might be heading. So Toby, let's start with you. What is the current state of affairs when it comes to HR tech? Where are we at?
Messy. It's the word I'd use. Messy.
Absolutely agree.
Messy, fragmented, disparate. I can't think of many positive words, to be honest. And I think it stems from when we look at HR or people departments, they have recruitment, L&D, talent and leadership, internal comms, benefit and compensation. All of those functions tend to only develop technology that validates their own individual segment of that department, rather than kind of fitting into a holistic employee experience design. And as we've seen time and again with our clients, is that just makes everything so much harder, not only for an end user who has to switch between all these different technologies, but then from a HR point of view, where it's like, I've got so many platforms giving me so many dashboards and so much data, I don't actually know how all this data links together. So yeah, in a word, messy.
Fantastic. Well, Sonia, it sounds like you resonate with that. Have you got anything to add?
I do. And I look at the title of what we're talking about today, which is changing the face of HR. I think we should put a full stop there, because I think we have to change the face of HR. And then we go tech in 2025. And for me, there is a real difference in the two, you know, because I'm absolutely with Toby. I think it is a little bit of a mess. And I think some people just get, you know, the magpie with the sparkly diamond comes in and a new thing comes and then it's taken away and it adds to, as Toby said, the collective of tech that we have. And I think sometimes we miss the fundamental essence for me, which is we're there to improve business, because that's what everybody is there for, is to create a business that is functioning and is making money or generating charitable gains, etc., by actually, as Toby said, enhancing the employee experience. And the two don't seem to be linking up very much at the moment. We get lots of tech coming in that probably is great to play with, but actually what difference does it make to the business? And as Toby says, when it's then added to another one and another one and another one, are we actually starting to complicate matters in HR tech? Or are we really improving our businesses by engaging our employees and making them, you know, and getting them to have a great time with tech as an end user? And I think we're just getting a little bit confused at the moment.
So has HR tech gone too far? I mean, I'm hearing words like messy and disjointed, discombobulated. Is there just too much? Should we be looking to strip tech back and go back to basics? Or, you know, what's the route forward from here?
For me personally, it's about choosing the tech that's right for the business and the objectives of the business. So I don't think any of it is wrong. I just think sometimes we're probably not informed enough, or as Toby referred to, you know, look at the data that says, actually, is this going to be the right thing for the business? Is it going to improve business and employee outcomes? And I think those two aren't always looked at. It's, you know, all those aspects out there. You look at how many HR systems there are now, and they're all slightly different, which means they'll have a slightly different client base, which is great. But we have to go, what is right for the business? What is right for the employees? And that's a bit that sometimes I think gets a bit lost.
So Marcia's just come on and said, you know, tech in HR has gone far enough, right? Why hasn't someone created something which actually focuses on weaving together current systems so they can actually talk to each other, rather than coming up with yet another new system, yet another new piece of software or platform? Actually, maybe what we should be focusing on is helping different departments, different groups of employees and different systems actually work better and more closely together. Do you think that's fair to say, Toby?
Yes, I think, but the answer isn't single sign-on. Like, that's the thing that goes, oh, if we do single sign-on, then everything's fixed, and we can have as many platforms as we want.
Not quite the same thing, right?
Exactly. But I think going back to, just to elaborate on Sonia's point, if we think about, we all have phones, right? We all have phones, and we get to decide what software we use on our phones, or apps if you're way younger than me. So there's an element of choice there with the technology we engage with on those devices. When you're an employer, that decision is made for us by the employer. The technology as an employee you're engaged with is going to be this. We've made the decision for you. There is no opportunity for choice. So you can't really look at your phone and say, oh, I install all these apps. I have loads of apps on my phone. I'm used to using lots of different technology, because you've made a very specific decision to do that. In an organization, you've been forced it. And I was talking to someone about the other day. Do you remember when U2 forced their album onto all iPhones? That is essentially what HR technology goes, here, have this, and you're going to like it. And if you don't, well, then go work somewhere else.
How do we get around that, though? Because, you know, you've got all these different companies creating all these different products and services, and, you know, you don't want this one Big Brother-esque kind of company that's creating this one behemoth of a piece of software. Essentially, you want companies in their lane who have expertise in a specific demographic or sector to develop something that's really tailored for that. But then the problem seems to be, yes, you want that focus on someone who's an expert in that space to develop something, but then also tying it in with all the other experts in the other spaces without it becoming too unwieldy. And like you said there, you know, single sign-on, this is something we see with clients in the employee benefit space as well. Actually, single sign-on, although it sounds really nice and sounds like it could be a really useful thing, can actually be more of a barrier to engagement than can be something that promotes engagement. So I'll be curious to hear your thoughts around that.
I think I'm going to go back to what Sonia said about let's put the full stop in the title and change the face of HR full stop first, because what happens is let me give you an example. L&D and internal comms teams constantly battling to do exactly the same thing. And in every organization I've worked with, there's been an internal comms platform and a learning platform, both pushing content out to people of similar natures. And you're like, why are they two platforms? Why are they two different strategies? Why are they two functions that aren't really talking to each other? And in most cases, actually arguing with each other about who owns the opportunity to deliver that content, both of which will say that they're really busy and have got too much work. Well, like, if someone's trying to take the work off you, then let them have it. Don't argue about it. But I think that's the element that you've got to break down these silos, because otherwise it's nothing to do really with the tech providers. The tech providers create tech that the market wants. That's why they exist. Internal comms wants an internal comms platform. A learning team wants a learning experience platform. But there's crossover. And because the internal comms team, the L&D team aren't talking, you create a rubbish employee experience as a result. But internal comms and L&D are quite happy because they've kind of gone, well, we've ticked our box. We've done exactly what we set out to do in our own individual strategy, but you've actually made the employee experience worse.
Okay, so I'm kind of hearing here that maybe this isn't so much a tech problem, but more a HR problem.
I pretty much agree with that, to be fair, Jamie. I think it is a HR problem. I think HR isn't, in all cases, I'm going to generalize, so sorry to everybody out there who is, but isn't keeping up with the market. And it isn't, for me, HR needs to focus on a couple of core elements, which is still communication and how it, you can put as much tech out there as possible, but actually employees are still finding it difficult to communicate. So until you actually get that communication cadence, for want of a better word, right, and that's just enabling people to have conversations, because we are, at the end of the day, herd animals. We still need to communicate with people. So we still need to help people to communicate well. And it doesn't matter whether you're remote, hybrid, in the office, we still haven't nailed how to communicate. So then we're not actually on a good platform, because it doesn't matter what you add on top. All you're doing is diluting the experience and everything that you add on top. So I do think we need to change the face of HR. We do need to be a lot more business savvy and really think about what are the interventions that's going to help our businesses to thrive through our people. And AI, tech, all those are absolutely in there, but we've just got to choose wisely and not go and grab stuff because we think they're a really good thing to do. Choose wisely. And it might be less is more. And I don't mean from the number of new ideas coming into the market, but the number of things you have in your business at any one time. And it doesn't mean just because you've put something in this year, it's going to follow you through for the next 5 years, because the landscape's changing far too quickly. And I think we've got to get used to putting something in, working with it until we've kind of optimized it, then changing, and not saying this has got to be a 10-year life cycle on it, or, because we've made an investment, therefore it's got to last you for a period of time. And that's where I think we've got to change as HR people.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because, we're talking about the face of HR and technology predominantly here today, but it's come right back to one of the most basic things in business that you need to get right, and that's communication. And before I came into the employee benefits world, I was a management consultant. So I worked with well over 100 businesses all over the UK, different businesses of different sizes and different sectors. And it didn't matter how big the business was or how small, what sector they were working in. When I was brought in, the main issue that I was helping them to deal with was poor communication from one side or the other, but often both. And so I find it really interesting that in a world where we have so much connectivity, so much technology that enables us to connect across vast distances in a plethora of different ways, we're still struggling with this age-old problem. And I'm sat here wondering, well, with the advent of something like AI, how can that be brought in to perhaps help with this problem?
I don't think it can.
I agree.
I think if you look at the technology landscape outside the world of work, it's not necessarily platform agnostic, but you see a culture of communication that relies on the individual having followers, the individual creating content that people want to engage with. When you then flip that inside an organization, you can't see my mouth anymore. I'll go like this. When you flip that inside an organization, you flip it on its head and you go, oh, well, it's platform first and then human second. And it's like, well, where's this human element of the content creator, the live streamer approach that works so well on Discord servers and Twitch and Instagram and YouTube? People follow the people they want to follow in terms of content. When you're at work, it's like you will follow the message from this one source of truth. And that's simply not good enough, because technology, one of the many dogs, technology enables you to create lots of different people creating lots of different content, maybe with the same message. So I think it requires that human first approach. Is how are you bringing people into the loop in your communication, collaboration space, enabled by the technology, rather than here's the technology, now we need to shove people into it. I think that's where I'd come from.
What would you like to know, Sonia?
Yeah, and we must remember AI. It can't create anything that's not there. All it is regurgitating effectively in a different format, however you ask it, information that's there. So I think in the essence of communication, it will only work if somebody wants to and has the motivation to go and seek different things. So you could on a SharePoint or whatever you use as your Teams, whatever you use as your communication platform, you could obviously have a process where people search and it brings up everything that's in there in a very, very succinct manner. But that's not going to help people communicate, because you've still got to have people who've got the motivation and the desire to be communicated with, and B, wish to communicate back. And as somebody on the chat earlier put, and Toby certainly mentioned it as well, it is about trust. It is about building and generating cultures where that trust and that enablement is in there. And it's all about, again, we can't lose sight that what we're doing it for is to generate better businesses, because better businesses have the ability to then engage colleagues more so. So that's where, we go round in this little circle a lot of the time. But I am absolutely with Toby. AI won't help to improve communication. It can, in some ways, just complicate it a bit more. But it is a good tool to use for the right things.
Well, and if you remove the voice and the human element, what you end up getting is all communications and messages sounding exactly the same. So that's really like, oh, hey, ChatGPT, can you make me an update for the CEO based on these 5 points? And it's like, well, it won't think or feel or sound like the CEO. Now that might be a good thing, because the CEO might be as dry as crackers. But what you need to do as a leader in an organization, be able to convey messages digitally in formats like this. This is the way you lead and communicate in an organization now. But most leaders shy away from it. Whereas Gen Z, this is their primary communication method, is through live streaming content. So you've got these two very opposing kind of styles clashing in the workplace like never before. And AI won't solve that, like Sonia said.
Absolutely. And I can't agree with Toby more on that last statement. I think organizations are spending a lot of time enabling people to be open about how they feel, to express when they're not happy with how things are done. And that's real younger generations coming through against us older people who are used to kind of just knuckling down and kind of going, oh, you accept everything. And they are absolutely clashing in the middle. And I think organizations are creating, probably subconsciously, quite a little bit of a melting pot that is going to need a little bit of sorting out soon.
Okay, so we've discussed a lot about what's wrong and what perhaps needs to be fixed, the challenges in HR, and generally how that extends out into the tech side of HR. And just picking up on a couple of the comments that have come through here, encourage regular feedback and communication between employees and managers to create a culture of transparency and trust. I think we all know that, right? And there's not a business in the land that doesn't think that that's a good idea. And Deborah said that onboarding is so vital for setting out the communication expectations. Couldn't agree more. But if we all know this to be the case, why are we so bad at it?
Silos, lack of cross collaboration. I genuinely think that's it. There's not the system and process of HR traditionally does not enable you to be successful in a tech environment. So fundamentally, you know, those silos that you have: employer brand, recruitment, L&D, internal comms, blah 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 blah. They aren't fit for purpose anymore, because essentially what we're now moving towards is delivering essentially a customer experience for employees. That's kind of what's demanded. That's what you need to do. That's how you need to design it. Now, if you were to set a business up to design and deliver a customer experience in the same way you've built a HR team, you'd absolutely 100% uncategorically fail at doing anything good in customer experience. The benefit is delivering a customer experience is nothing new, because businesses have figured that out over the past 20 years using human-centered design, double diamond, agile method. All these kind of things have permeated into business as usual for a lot of organizations to design better customer experiences. Whereas HR, we've kind of sat on our hands and go, well, we'll just do exactly what the CIPD tells us in terms of a structure of a HR team, because that's the way to do it. It's not. And by adding in more technology into that only exacerbates the situation, doesn't fix it. So you kind of have to start again. How do you build the HR team of the future? What does that look like? And then you can start making just better tech recommendations. The massive caveat I will put in here is tech procurement, and especially in larger organizations, kind of handcuffs you slightly, but you need to put the right business case forward. And I think what you end up doing as a siloed, fragmented HR team is not being able to do that. So tech procurement can get in the way, but they could also be your friend as well.
Absolutely. And we've just had a comment come in just saying that HR often finds itself in the difficult position of balancing the needs of the company with the needs of its employees. And this can obviously create some friction situations. But I think this is a really good point, because, you know, if we look at how you optimize a business, it has to be optimized for the whole, much like if you look at planet Earth. If we just took one specific animal, one specific species, or indeed one specific human being and said, right, we're going to optimize the way the entire planet works for this one person, odds on the planet would probably not last very long. It probably wouldn't be the best way to make sure that the planet and all of the different species thrive and propagate on here. And I think the same applies to a business, right? Is you can't necessarily just pick out a single employee. And there's so many different types of people with different characters, different personalities. How can you possibly optimize an organization for one single person or one single set of people? And so actually you're left with a position where you have to optimize the business as a whole, because ultimately, especially for those people who are in positions of leadership, you know, it's not just the duty of care to the employees, but actually you're very consciously aware that, you know, these are families that are relying on this business. It's not just your 100 employees, but maybe 300-400 people, the children, the partners, and all the other people that are relying on the people working in that business to bring the money in and provide for their families. So again, we've talked a lot about the kind of the problem, but what is the solution? You know, we're kind of bringing things around to a close. Where do we go from here? What's the next step forwards?
I'll let you, Sonia, you go first.
Okay, for me, I think we've got to encourage HR teams and businesses to take a step back momentarily to really look at where tech can enhance their employee experience and the business. There are so many great tech things out there, and there's been some really good comments in the comment section about, you know, HR processes. Sometimes HR departments get just a little bit too overexcited about a process. Sometimes you've got to take some out and let those experiences start to come through, because there's far too many processes which are hindering HR from really helping individuals to be engaged. You know, I've recently been in a business that had only put in a performance review last year, 4 pages long. I said to the CEO, are you using it? He went, no, it's too complicated. I was like, well, you've only just put it in, you know, and we're still doing things like that, you know. So let's just take a step back. Let's try and simplify. And I always say the hardest thing to do in the world is to simplify things. It's so much easier to make them complicated. And let's use technology to simplify the experience, to therefore enhance it, is where I stand on it.
What would you add to that, Toby?
Not a lot. Sonny said it pretty perfectly. I think I think I said this at Disrupt HR Birmingham last year, that MailChimp had a really good campaign called customers. They said, stop clumping all your customers together and creating customers. Like, you have very many different types of people. And one of the biggest barriers to, appreciating all the protected and unprotected characteristics of individuals is creating a singular employee experience. So you kind of just have to do exactly as Sonia said, and kind of just remove the egos from each of those individual departments about what they do. Learning and development. Look, I've spent a lot of time with learning and development. If you turned off all of the learning and development stuff on offer in a company at the moment, would the company still survive? Probably. The smaller companies I've worked with don't have a learning and development department. Their people just get on with it and do stuff. Now, I'm not saying don't do any learning and development at all, but I'm saying, well, what is the actual critical stuff, and what stuff is being delivered just to validate that job person, that person's job role within the HR function? I think if you apply that to, say, your content, your technology, and your teams, things start looking a lot different. And the thing I'll end on is Chilango, who used to be a kind of a burrito version of Subway in London. I saw them at a conference a couple of years ago, and they had a monthly cycle where they would be able to plug in technology, and if it didn't work at the end of the month, they unplugged it. They were plugging, and it was like a USB stick. But what we've created is a system where it's like, you get in one of the big HRIS platforms, naming no names, SuccessFactors and all those kind of players, SAP, and I remember this is going back 10 years now, so it's probably not the same, but they were implementing SuccessFactors into the organization. I said, one of my colleagues got seconded onto the implementation team. It's like, cool, when are you coming back to the L&D team? Went, 3 years. I was like, come on. Like, do you not think technology will have changed in 3 years? And bearing in mind, the company I was working for was a technology company itself. It was like,
wow. Okay, so I've got a question for the viewers now. What tech are you going to be bringing on board in 2025? So do stick a comment in, and we'll read out some of the comments that come through. And I'm interested from Toby and Sonia what trends you see coming up in 2025. But all of the chat so far kind of reminds me of an old fable, an old story, and it's this story of a woman who is cooking the Sunday roast, and she does this every single week, and her daughter sees her doing this, and every time she does this, she cuts about an inch off the ends of this roast and pops it in the tin and pops it in the oven. And after watching this for a few weeks, the young girl says to her mum, well, why do you chop the ends off the roast? And she says, well, it's just the way that it's the way you do it. It's the way my mum taught me to do it. Why don't you go and ask your grandmother? So little girl, she goes away and not satisfied, and she asks her grandmother, and her grandmother says, oh, it's just the way my mum showed me to do it. That's the way we've always done it. But she says, let me go and ask my mum, and I'll come back to you. So she does. She goes and asks her mum, and her mum says, oh, well, what it was back in the day, we didn't have a lot of money. We only had a small oven and one pot, and the roast wouldn't fit in the pot, so we had to chop the ends off just to make it fit. And I think that epitomizes really everything that we've talked about here, and just highlights that perhaps maybe technology's become so unwieldy because we are stuck in processes that aren't necessarily appropriate for where we're at with the technology we have. And so maybe it is a case of just needing to go back to the drawing board and rethinking our process side of things, and then applying technology as kind of a supporting agent to all of that. So over to Sonia then. What trends technology-wise do you see coming in for HR in 2025 and beyond?
Well, I do see greater AI coming in without a doubt. And whether that's, I know we've had some mentioned already, whether it's in the recruitment zone, in the learning zone, I do think AI will continue to make a storm through those areas. I think we've, at this moment in time, probably kind of leveled in terms of the overall HR, in terms of the system per se, but I still think it is those individual areas that will start to come through and shine a little bit more. But as Toby said, the key is going to be integrating the right ones and not making them difficult to use. Even if you have to sign in separately, if they're fun, and I think sometimes we take the fun out of everything. If they're fun, people are going to use them, and you're going to get far more benefit from that employee experience and therefore to the business.
Yeah, I think gamification is a big part of keeping people engaged these days, isn't it? Toby, what would you add to that?
There we go. Susie's comment was across my face. Yes, Susie, you are biased completely, but I do also agree with you as well. Hewler doing some awesome stuff, and I think one of the things I see from Hewler is the element of kind of customer relationship management software. Like customer relationship management software in a customer world is there and thereabouts. That's been done, and it kind of gets applied in the recruitment world. And then once you've hired them, we'll switch that off, and then we'll just flog them all into the same old systems. Like, but how are you continuing to track and measure what your people are doing inside the organization? Because you've got this thing that would work really well because other teams, your customer team will be doing it. They'll be tracking the user from the moment they follow your company on social media to the moment they unfollow you on social media. You do that with customers. Why are you not doing that as employees and looking at advocacy, engagement, productivity, and all of that kind of stuff? So I think the biggest thing to shift is understanding what people are doing and when through data, but also just redressing the balance that you can't just try and offer your people the very best stuff, because that doesn't work. You also can't offer them the very worst stuff either. There is a balance to be had, because ultimately, if you treat the people in an equitable way, what you end up with is a better company. I think Sonia said it loads of times, right? You treat people the way they want to be treated to make more money. That's why that happens. You don't treat people to the way they wanted to make people happy. You do, but that's not why you do it as a business. It needs to be tangibly linked to the output. So I think there's this whole, how do you understand what people are doing and how is that linked to the measurable performance of the organization? Because at the moment, it would just be a survey that goes out maybe once a year and go, how happy are you with your leader? How happy are you with your seat? How happy are you with your desk? And do you like the CEO? And then we measure the movement on that on an annual basis and expect stuff to change. But it's just not good enough anymore. Customer teams aren't doing that. And actually, sorry, I'll shut up in a second. But my business partner, Emily, kind of put it really well. It's like, imagine if a sales team were only measured on how happy the customers were and not the sales figures. They'd get laughed out. They'd get left out of the company. They have to be providing tangible commercial value. Otherwise, what's the point in you being there?
Absolutely. And I think that's something that kind of gets lost in some of these conversations sometimes. And we just really need to be brutally honest. Why do businesses exist? Yeah, they want to change the world and make a difference in people's lives and all of this good stuff. But honestly, at the end of the day, it comes down to them being commercial enterprises. They need to make money. They need to make profit. That's how they pay their people, enable everyone who works for them to support their families. And if the business can do some good and change the world and make a positive difference in people's lives at the same time, that's fantastic. But the reality is, if it's not generating revenues, profits, and able to look after itself and its people, what's the point, right?
Yeah, agreed.
Well,
we could all just sit here and go,
yeah.
End it, Jamie.
Feels like that's a nice place to wrap it up. I just want to give a few people a shout out here. So we've got a few comments coming through. One LinkedIn user said that points and badges for completing courses, award points and badges for completing training courses and achieving learning goals. Let's use XP in the workforce. So again, talking about that kind of gamification of these systems. Really good point. Someone else, Deborah here, said HR AI is inbuilt to take care of the heavy lifting side of the role. Yeah, I totally agree. Karine has said that HR AI productivity tools. So loads of great suggestions coming in here from the audience. It sounds like this is something that all of you are really thinking about, how you're going to apply this in your day-to-day lives in HR as well. So I think that's a great place to wrap it up. Thank you so much, Toby and Sonia, for joining us on this inaugural episode of HR Buzz today. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you both, two phenomenal human beings. And of course, thanks to all of you for tuning in. You've given us some great comments, and it's been really great to read those out throughout the course of the show. Now, we are doing this every single month. This is going to be a regular feature. It's going to be on the first Friday of each month at 11 o'clock. So this one was slightly delayed. We're going to be pulling it back to 11 o'clock next month. So do keep an eye out on our various pages for notifications about those. And if you feel so inclined, stick it in your diary on the first Friday of each month so you don't forget. So that's all from us. Thank you very much once again to Sonia and Toby, and to all of you tuning in today.